The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is a group of 10 countries: Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar and Brunei. In 2012, the group had a combined population of 604 million and a total GDP of $2.3 trillion. Now, the Asean Association has been in existence in various incarnations since 1967, but it's had a free trade association, the Asean Free Trade Agreement, in place since 1992, and this has seen exports from the region grow by 567% in US dollar terms between 1992 and 2012. So the next logical step from the free trade agreement would be to have a European-style economic bloc. And by 2015, the ASEAN nations are hoping to have an economic community in place. Now this will create a single market within the region, lowering barriers to trade and investment, whilst also stimulating economic growth within the region. So in the past, countries like China and India would have overshadowed the ASEAN nations in terms of total GDP, in terms of population, and in terms of how competitive they were and how well they attracted foreign direct investment. But in the last couple of years, China has become less competitive, labour prices are rising, and the currency is appreciating, which makes their exports more expensive. So in the past, major manufacturers would have chosen to put their Asian Pacific headquarters in somewhere like China or India, where they could have not only their headquarters but also their manufacturing base. But now, with the ASEAN nations becoming more competitive in terms of wages and also in terms of the cost of exporting from these places, it would make more sense to have your headquarters in somewhere like Singapore, which consistently ranks in the top 3 of the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, and then having your manufacturing base in somewhere like Vietnam or Laos, Cambodia, where labour is considerably cheaper. So the openness to trade and investment that the ASEAN economic community will create is obviously a great thing for these countries and will really open them up to the world, potentially creating a global trade hub. But there are vulnerabilities as well that are created by this openness. So while deeper integration and the free movement of capital, people and goods is a great thing when the global economy is doing well, but as we've seen in the past, when things start to go wrong, the risk of contagion between these countries, which are so closely integrated, becomes exacerbated. So inflationary pressures are also something that the ASEAN countries have to be worried about. They're actually a really unique mix of mature emerging economies and frontier economies. And in these mature economies, what we've seen is rising asset prices and robust credit levels, which have fueled consumption and the growing middle class in these countries over the last few years. But the fear is that there will be a contagion of inflationary pressures from these countries when we see property booms and the like to the frontier markets. So this is also something that's a concern as they become more economically integrated. Following the global financial crisis of 2008-2009, we did see the pitfalls of ever closer union in terms of economic integration with the European Union and the subsequent Eurozone sovereign debt crisis. So what we've really seen is the problems associated with creating a union, in a kind of a poorly planned framework or hastily planned framework. So what we're really hoping for the ASEAN nations is that they'll go into the economic community having learned lessons from the past and what's happened to the EU and building their community on strong economic fundamentals and sound financial practice and not prioritise fast growth rates over these important principles.